All right, today we're going to dive into the really complex relationship between migration, territory, and identity. And we're going to do it by looking at a fascinating case study, modern Wales. We'll break it down, looking first at the conflicting government policies at play, then we'll get into the real, lived experiences of migrants, and finally, we'll see what this all tells us about the very idea of territory and belonging.
So, where are we getting all this from? Well, our main source for this whole discussion is an academic text called A Welcoming Nation. This book is packed with research that gives us a crucial window into what's happening on the ground, and it's going to be our guide for this explainer.
Let's kick things off with this really powerful quote from Kate Boss-Griffiths. She was a German-born Egyptologist who made Wales her home, and she said, "I am a seed from a distant land. I grew to be part of Wales." What a beautiful metaphor, right? It perfectly frames our topic. It gets us thinking about that central question, how does someone put down roots in a new place? This is the perfect hook to get us right to the heart of our theme, belonging.
Now, for your AMC course, this case study is a perfect fit. We are smack in the middle of Theme 2, Territoire et Mémoire, and we're zeroing in on Axis 1, Territoire, frontières et identité. As you'll see, migration doesn't just mean crossing borders on a map. It actually creates and redraws cultural frontiers within a nation itself. So all of this brings us to the big question we're going to try and answer today. How does the case of Wales reveal the complex relationship between national territory, shifting frontiers, and the construction of identity? We're going to tackle this by looking at two sides of the coin. First, those big government policies, and second, the real human stories behind them.
Okay, so to really get what's happening in Wales, we first have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture across the UK, and our starting point is an official government policy with a very stark name: the hostile environment. This really sets the national stage for our case study.
So what exactly is this policy? Well, it's a top-down strategy from the UK government, and its goal is pretty blunt: to make life so difficult for undocumented migrants that they just leave. But here's the crucial part. It pushes border control into everyday life. Landlords, doctors, even teachers are expected to check immigration status. They're basically turned into border guards. And this creates what sociologists call an internal frontier, a border that doesn't exist at the coast, but right inside society itself.
But here's where it gets really interesting. In complete contrast to this UK-wide policy, the government in Wales has tried to carve out a totally different path. They've pushed forward this vision of Wales as a nation of sanctuary. The nation of sanctuary isn't just a nice idea, it's an official Welsh government ambition. The goal is to build a culture of hospitality, to offer real, practical support for refugees and asylum seekers. So you see the direct clash, right? The UK's hostile environment versus Wales' welcoming vision. This tension is absolutely central to what we're looking at today.
And you might be wondering, how is this even possible? How can one part of the UK do something so different? Well, the answer is a political concept called devolution. Since 1999, Wales has had its own government with power over key areas like health and education. This political setup allows Wales to create its own policies and, this is really important, to build a national identity that can be very different from the one coming from the UK government in London.
Okay, so we've set the stage, right? We have these two huge conflicting policies. But what does this actually feel like for the people living through it? This is where things get a lot more nuanced. We're now going to look at the lived experiences of migrants, and you'll see they paint a picture that's way more complex than just hostile or welcoming. And to do this properly, we need a really important analytical tool: intersectionality. It's a big word, but the idea is pretty simple. You can't understand someone's experience by looking at just one part of their identity. Instead, things like their race, their gender, their religion, their migrant status, they all intersect and overlap, creating a totally unique experience of the world. For an asylum seeker, being a migrant is just one layer.
And this quote from Gora, an LGBTQ+ asylum seeker, wow, it just hits the nail on the head. He says that in a gay club, he feels welcome, he feels part of a community. But that welcome has boundaries. It's tied to that specific space. The moment he steps outside, his other identities, as a black man, as a foreigner, become the most visible thing about him, and that feeling of welcome just vanishes. His experience is shaped by that intersection of his sexuality, his race, and his migrant status.
Now have a look at this drawing. It gives us such a fascinating visual of the migrant journey. It was made by a sanctuary seeker named Irene, and she shows this path with words like preparation, ideas, and opportunity. It's all about learning, building a new life. But then, look where the road goes. Right off the edge of the page, the destination is unknown. It's such a powerful symbol of the deep uncertainty that defines the whole experience of seeking asylum.
This next drawing, by a woman named Pam, is even more stark. She draws her experience as a series of floating, disconnected heads. What a powerful visual metaphor for the psychological trauma of being displaced. It perfectly shows that feeling of being in limbo, totally isolated, cut off from your past while you wait and wait for a decision about your future. You could almost call it a frontier of the mind.
So you can already see from these personal stories that the idea of a simple welcome is, well, it's complicated, but it doesn't stop there. We also have to be honest and acknowledge that even within this nation of sanctuary, there are some very real limits to that welcome. There's friction and even hostility bubbling up at the local level.
As our source material shows, the reality on the ground isn't always so rosy. The very phrase nation of sanctuary has been co-opted and twisted by far-right groups to stir up fear. And this isn't just online talk. It's led to real-world protests against housing asylum seekers in towns like Penally and Llanelli. This shows a massive gap between the government's official top-down vision and the sometimes hostile reception on the ground. These are those internal frontiers of prejudice that we need to analyze. Okay, so let's try and pull all of these threads together now. It's time to circle back and really tackle that guiding question we started with.
So, how does Wales reveal this complex relationship between territory, frontiers, and identity? Well, I think the key takeaway is that Wales acts as a microcosm. It's a small space where you see everything happening at once. You have the UK's hostile policy clashing with Wales's welcoming identity, but both of those big ideas are filtered through the complicated, intersectional, lived experiences of individuals. And the result isn't one single reality. It's a whole series of complex and often conflicting frontiers of belonging, frontiers that are psychological and social, not just lines on a map.
All right, let's get practical. For your exams, how do you turn all this analysis into a really solid, structured argument? Use this simple three-step recipe. Step 1, state your idea clearly. For example, official government policy is always filtered through individual lived experience. Step 2, back it up with a specific example. Gora's testimony reveals he feels welcome in a club, but not on the street. And Step 3, explain the connection. This shows that a national welcoming policy doesn't guarantee a feeling of welcome for everyone because their different intersectional identities create different experiences of the same territory. Idea, example, explanation. That structure is your key to success.
And to finish, let's just open things up with a final thought. We've been analyzing these internal cultural frontiers in Wales. So how might that compare to the classic American frontier thesis? The idea that the geographical western frontier was where American identity was really forged. Is it possible that Wales is creating a new kind of frontier, not one of land, but one of integration and identity? It's a big question, and it really connects what we've seen today to broader historical contexts, and maybe even opens a door to other AMC themes like representation or power. Thanks for your attention.